Let's go to the front page of The Sun. Here it is. Mum's home. Riot tweet Lucy free after year in jail away from her daughter 12. Speaking to the paper after her release from prison yesterday, Lucy Connolly's husband said their daughter has found it very difficult not having her mum home. Connolly served 10 months of the 31-month sentence she received. Christo, there's the top of the byline there. Victim of two-tier justice. Is this how this case is going to be remembered?
Yes, I do think it is, because, I mean, look, I think we've got to be mindful, and I think the part of this case that should be remembered is that she pleaded guilty.
Yeah.
I think where the two-tier is that she was given advice to plead guilty, whereas I think a lot of people then looked at the case with Ricky Jones, the Labour councillor, who pleaded not guilty and was found not guilty in a court of law, but was actually on camera verbalising what some people would call some sort of incitement to violence. Again, he was found not guilty, and they would wonder why she was then given the advice and refused bail. That, to me, is the two-tier point, not that she went to prison at all.
But why does that translate into two-tier rather than just bad legal advice?
Because I think at the time our Prime Minister was making it really clear, and I would say as well there's an argument that the Prime Minister was even prejudicing cases by calling everyone far right when no due process had happened. The legal counsel, you're quite right, were then saying, well, look, you're not going to be given bail because the Prime Minister has said that any of these cases will be refused bail. The judiciary are going to come down on you like a ton of bricks. If you want to mitigate your sentence, plead guilty. That's what she did. And then actually, I think what the Ricky Jones case exposed was that actually if you had taken your chances and pleaded not guilty, which he did, he was found not guilty. And some people would argue that there is a perception that what he said was worse.
Tessa?
We're just in a really odd climate at the moment where we just love locking people up. And actually, I don't think it's helpful comparing those two cases because on so many levels they're very different. They were convicted under different laws for different things, although there seemed to be a similarity. If you look at the set of rules and the sentencing guideline, they went by the book. She ended up being incarcerated. That's bonkers, really, for saying it was gross what she said, you know, suggesting she didn't care if people were set on fire. That's horrific. I don't care whether you're right of the spectrum or left politically.
I agree, by the way. I think that she deserved to be punished in some way.
But incarceration, you know, on every metric, she shouldn't have been locked up, I don't think. But then if you look at the Palestine Action arrests, the spate of them all in one weekend, you know, elderly, sort of well-meaning people who you'd expect to see on Gardener's Question Time being
under
arrested.
the letter of the law, that's what the Terrorism Act requires.
But politically, the problem is, on every front, it's like, lock them up, you know, stop it. You know, everything's been criminalised because that plays well to the voters politically, but it doesn't work out when you've got full prisons.
Well, let's look at the Telegraph, because, of course, that connects to this story. It's reporting on a surge in prosecutions for social media posts. So, again, we're back into people going to prison because of something they've said on social media. But again, it might sound ridiculous. But on the other hand, if you're going to have the law, and the law is very clear on things that you can and cannot say, whether they're out in public or whether you print them and put them up on social media, that's the world we live in at the moment. People are saying most of what they want to say on social media, Christo. This shouldn't come as a surprise.
Yeah, but I think it's about proportion. I think it's about people being subjective about what they believe. By the way, I think it's awful to stir up racial hatred. I think some of the stuff that is said is absolutely terrible. But I think, again, if you're looking at the two-tier accusation, and I realise these are different types of cases, but people then look at things like, okay, take someone like Hugh Edwards, who didn't then end up going to prison, and then people are going to prison for sending a social media post. I think people are now starting to look...
Completely different offences, completely different laws.
They're still using what is online in an absolutely horrific way, firstly. And secondly, a lot of people would argue that sending a tweet that is horrible and racially, disgusting is nowhere near as bad as other crimes that seem to be less severely punished.
Is that how you feel, Tessa?
I think the landscape's changing very fast. It's a really febrile atmosphere out there, and particularly last year, I think Keir Starmer was fresh into government. The courts are independent. I think we lose sight of that. And politicians, particularly the Prime Minister, is allowed to give his opinion of what's happening in the country. I thought he was right to try and put a spoke in the wheels of what could have got very quickly, and did in some cases. If you're in a hotel in Rotherham that was being torched, you felt like what she had wished for was coming horribly true. So I think there was a case of, like, we need to calm this down, and there was a recognition that one of the ways of fanning those flames, those racial flames, was massively on social media. It's a very different landscape, and how does the law play catch up with that? And as with all these things, often the pendulum swings a bit too far before there's a corrective, and I think that's perhaps what's happening.
OK, let's move on.